Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach.
And I'm Rena Nine, and thank you for joining us. It's now noon on the West Coast, which means the Nevada caucuses are officially underway. And right now, we can report Bernie Sanders is leading in the initial preference of caucus goers who are entering and going into the caucuses today. Caucus locations have actually officially closed their doors. So what happens now, the groupings will begin. We'll also have started learning some of the results from these entrance polls, where they show that health care is still a top issue for these voters, followed by climate change, income inequality, and foreign policy.
But the entrance polls show it's more important that the nominee can beat President Trump than someone who agrees with them on issues. So we're now going to talk to our esteemed colleague, Ed O'Keefe, who is out there in Nevada. Ed, we've learned that Bernie Sanders is leading among initial choice of caucus goers as they're entering into those caucus sites right now. Tell us what this really means for the Sanders campaign.
These officers include
Well, it means that they could very well be on the verge of another win. The Sanders campaign is regarded as the best organized in this state. They've been at it for almost a year. They have targeted especially this state's younger and Latino population. Latinos account for about 20% of the eligible voters in this state. Those large numbers of early votes cast earlier this week, 75,000 of them roughly, were nearly the number of people who caucused in 2016. And the state party tells us that a majority of them were younger and first-time caucus goers. That's exactly the kind of person Bernie Sanders has been after, not only here in Nevada, but in states across the country. We're at the Bellagio Hotel on the Strip here in Las Vegas for a caucus that is being held specifically for Strip shift workers, people like the chefs, the housekeepers, the people who check in guests at the front desk, others who work perhaps on performances here at some of the hotels. As the caucus chairwoman just told the room, consider this a community meeting of people who are just here to make a decision, and they just finished electing what they call the permanent chairperson, who is going to serve as the sort of neutral leader of the caucus, which could take a few hours, could be done in just an hour. It just depends on exactly how well it goes. They have been handed, as they checked in today, this presidential preference card. We have permission from the state party to show you this. And as you see here, it gives everyone an option for their first alignment. So they may have picked someone like Bernie Sanders or Amy Klobuchar, or perhaps they pick someone like Andrew Yang, who's already dropped out of the race. After they make their first choice, they're asked to flip over and make their final choice in the event that their first choice doesn't have what they call viability, or at least 15% support of those here in the room. And so they make a second choice here, and then they're turning them in. I'm going to get out of the way. There's a woman now essentially just counting the number of people seated in participating. This woman in white there.
translate for any neighbors.
And so she's going around now counting up exactly how many people are here. And now they're also giving instructions in Spanish because, you know, understandably, not surprisingly, a lot of the folks who work here on the Strip are Latino. Spanish may be the first language. And this is, you know, part of what the Democratic Party does here to make sure that the largest number of eligible people can participate. There are 250 caucus sites across the state, a few here on the Strip, most of them being done in high schools, libraries, community centers, here in southern Nevada, up in Reno, Elko, and the other population centers. And if all goes well, by dinner time Pacific time, we may have some sense of who pulled it off here tonight, guys.
It's so fascinating, Ed, to be sort of a fly on the wall in the room there as you were showing us exactly how this is happening in real time. You also have reporting on the deficit of volunteers that have kind of delayed the start of the caucuses at some sites. How is that going to affect the process today? What are you hearing?
Well, again, and like I said, about 250 sites across the state. There are reports of very limited examples of situations where there weren't volunteers to do essentially what that woman there at the white podium is doing, to serve as the neutral precinct or caucus chairperson. The hope is that at each of these locations the party finds one sort of neutral observer to serve as the referee. In those instances, we are told where somebody didn't show up to do that today, it's raining outside, for example, which is rare here in the desert, or maybe something else came up. The party has said to the campaigns, look, if you guys want to offer somebody who could lead the room, we'll allow you to do that so that this process can begin. But again, we have very limited reporting of examples of this. So far, at least, just a few minutes into this hour, no reason to believe that this is a widespread problem.